strokes. Holding water, so much you will know about dolphin kicks, flip turns, dives, and how to find an awesome coach. Hosted by Brian Welter and Tyler Kearns. Holding water is where competitive swimming is learned.
Hey guys, welcome to the show. We're excited to be back. Tyler's actually at a swimming meet, so it's going to be me flying solo, at least for a little while here. If he gets done, he's going to jump on, but we're going to change it up just a little bit this week. We're still going to be talking age group, but we're going to be talking age group with a couple guys that grew up. One grew up in South Africa, the other one grew up in Romania. And so there's some cultural differences there, and we're going to talk about that. I'll bring them on right now. Let's start off with Robert Pinter from the Gator Swim Club. Hey, Robert, how's it going?
Good. How are you, Brian?
And then we've got Reinhardt Strijdom. I don't know. I can't ever remember how to say it. How do you say it, Reinhardt?
Yeah, that's close enough. Strijdom, that's good.
Okay. Reinhardt grew up in South Africa, swam in Kentucky, and he's now working over in Saudi Arabia. He's going to talk about that a little bit. Robert's down at the Gator Swim Club. That's where him and I met when I was still in Gainesville. And I guess, Robert, let's go ahead and get right into it. Just give us a little bit of background on yourself and sort of how you ended up where you're at now and how it all kind of played out for you.
Okay, sure. So, hi, everybody. The show, and Brian, thanks for inviting me to be on the show. A little bit about myself. Let's see. Well, I grew up in Romania, was born and raised in Northwest Romania, in a place very few people know called Transylvania. So
Nice.
I get a lot of crap about that from a lot of people. But anyway, so I grew up there. Of course, I didn't realize we had vampires in Romania until I came to US, but that's what I'm told. So growing up, I started swimming as an 8-year-old competitively. Fell into it by accident. One of the coaches told my mother that it was going to keep me off the streets, where I was out in the streets playing with the kids a lot, and she didn't like that. My mother didn't like that, so she enrolled me in swimming, and then I actually happened to win one of these local championships in a 50 freestyle long course. I think I went something like 1000. I think I still have that diploma somewhere. And then went on to keep training, and they recruited me to be on this 40 or 50 kid squad that was only selected kids that were I guess the best of the group that had trained that summer. And by the fall, I was part of this group. And then the rest is just a lot of hard work and history, and I'm sure I'll talk about that a little later. But when I was about almost 20 years old, I defected from Romania. I was part of the Romanian army at the time, so I was not only a defector, I was a deserter too, which complicated things. I had a rank in the Romanian army as a sergeant major. This was due to all the swim meets I had won, and it was just the way it was. So in Romania, you didn't have a choice not to do army time. So my choices were either to stay in the army or and swim for the army club, or swim with the police end of it and serve my army time in that way. And they each had a swim team, and I just happened to choose the army. So that's how I went. Once I left Romania, I lived in Hungary for about almost 2 years, about a year and 10 months. And during that time, my sole objective was to try to make it to US somehow on some kind of scholarship. Now, back then in 1989, there was no internet. There was, just snail mail, and it was very difficult to be in touch with US schools, as well as it was very difficult to communicate. So, it was phone calls, essentially, if you can set up a phone call with a coach somewhere. The other limitation I really had is I didn't realize how many schools existed in US that would be available to kind of award scholarships. So the first school and the only school I applied back then was University of Michigan. At the time, John Urbanchek was head coach there. he told me quickly, he replied to me pretty quickly that he didn't have a scholarship. And I think he may have mentioned something that I was a little too old because I was by the time I would have made it onto the team, I would have been almost 21 years old. So that's an old freshman. So he said no. And then I was totally devastated. Started looking again a little bit. And then I had a cousin who was able to be instrumental in helping me. And quickly after that, I was able to get a scholarship at Wisconsin. So my coach was Jack Pettinger back at Wisconsin. And he was coached, I think he's been there about 23 years when I got to the university. So it was a great time. Let's see, shortly after that, I was able to go and swim for Romania in the 92 Olympics. And you'll say, how did this happen? First, you're a defector, then you're a deserter, then all this other stuff, and now you're swimming in the Olympics for Romania. Well, I defected in 88. I got to Wisconsin in December of 89. By January of 1990, the revolution in Romania, a pretty bloody revolution had happened, and the government had been overturned. And all of a sudden, the scene in the country, and there was a new constitution and all that stuff. So I was able to rekindle my relationship with my old mates and the Romanian Swimming Federation. And through that connection and through the fact that I had posted some times that qualified me in the top 20 in the world, and the 200 fly and the 400 free, I was able to pretty much, represent Romania in the 92 Olympics. So there I was able to make a final in the 200 butterfly. Back then it was pretty good time if you swim under 2 minutes. So I went 1:59.7 in the morning. And then in the finals, I was able to come in 7th and go 1:59.34, which is still my best time. I only swam under 2 minutes 2 times in my life, and those were the 2 times right at the Olympic Games. So can't complain about it. I wish I would have. My objective was to try be on a medal podium. A bronze medal was 8/10 away. Wasn't meant to be, but I was in the hunt up to about 185 meters. So that's my claim to fame. Anyway, after that, graduated from Wisconsin, quickly wasn't sure what I was going to do. I knew I wasn't going to go back to Romania, stay in US. So I was able to get my green card and my work permit through my background in swimming, through my Olympic endeavors and others. And that kind of not forced me, but kind of incentivized me to become a coach. So I became a swim coach, quickly started coaching for a small club in outside of Madison, Wisconsin. I think they had like 30 swimmers, no more at the time. And I worked for them for about 11 months. And then I moved to a bigger club. They had about 75 swimmers. Then I became co-senior head coach at Badger Aquatics, which was in Madison. They were a monster club, about 450, 500 swimmers, year-round swimmers. And then from there, I was able to coach. I was recruited. I went to coach at University of Iowa as an assistant. I did that for 4 years, came back to Wisconsin-Madison as an assistant coach, then worked at Georgia Tech briefly, and back to Iowa as a club coach. And then finally in 2016, Troy recruited me, called me a whole bunch of times, tried to get me to Gainesville. And I couldn't say no, came to Gainesville, and here I am.
He needed somebody to compete with me,
I guess. Well, other than Troy, you were the only other coach I met back then. I mean, I remember meeting you and talking about the swimming scene in Gainesville.
Yep, going over the dynamics. That was right before I was getting ready to go down to work with Randy. So Reinhardt, tell us a little bit about your background.
Well, I'm not as interesting as Robert. That was quite cool to hear that. So I grew up in South Africa. Started swimming because I think it was one of the sports that I did that I was getting beat at. So really started training swimming, started competing and participated in a couple of World Cups for South Africa. I was about, what was I, probably 16 when, the South African relay won that gold 2004, 4x100. And Darian Townsend had just came back from the Olympics, and I swam the Winter Nationals 200 free, and I was seated right next to him. So that was like the biggest motivation. You had this world record holder right next to you. And I just basically went for it and tried to stay with him as long as I could. I think I went from like a 158 in the 200 to like a 152 or 153. And so that was basically the swim that then got me recruited. So Sean Zatani from Kentucky was there, and he ended up recruiting me. So I went to go swim at Kentucky. Finishing my degree there, I started coaching a little bit in Kentucky, both high school, country club, and club team. And I then came over to Saudi Arabia, where I first worked in developing their club swimming, trying to establish the first, club as you would know it in the States, that's governed by parents and independent, like not government-owned club. Started some swim meets and so forth, and then ended up getting the role as national coach for Saudi, representing them at the Islamic Games and so forth. And so a couple of years later, I decided to go into the private sector again, trying to develop swimming, in the private sector, just a little bit more freedom. And so my current project is working on female development for the sport of swimming, both water safety, coaches development, and just giving the Saudi girls an opportunity to swim. So that's quite an exciting first. We just finished constructing our first female academy. We have got some coaches coming in from Brazil and South Africa and so forth. We just basically waited for Corona to finish and flights to open. So that's something I'm very passionate about right now. Is kind of establishing girls swimming.
So go into that a little bit more. So what when you say establishing girls swimming, I think about establishing girls swimming. Like I guess what does that mean exactly for you? Like why do you have to focus on that the way that you're focused on that?
Yeah. So just culturally, the Saudis have very strict decency laws and so forth. So girls don't generally swim. It would be against the culture and the religion to have a girl be in a swimsuit with basically guys coaches, male coaches, and so forth.
So we got a question here. Do they wear this? What are they? Are they wearing regular swimsuits, or they wear the same gear? Or they what?
Yeah. So here's the thing. So what we're trying to do now is this is their culture. This is what they do. All power to them. None of my business what they wear and what they decide to do. So my goal is kind of to create an environment where they can wear what they want, and be, uncovered and wearing a regular swimsuit, because it's a ladies only facility. There's no guys in there. There's no male coaches, so they don't necessarily have to change and conform to, Western way of doing things. They can still be, following their culture, but swim at the same time. So that's kind of the goal. Is not to force them to, to follow the mold that we would have in the West, and just kind of develop them within their frame of culture. So I think, most of that comes from, when girls hit puberty, and they are considered women, it's culture for them to cover up. So the result of that is we have a lot of our younger kids extremely fast. We'll have 4 and 5-year-olds swimming. I was telling Brian the other day, some of the best butterfly and breaststroke technique that you'll see. But the parents know that when they're 11, 12, they're done. So they got to get the best out of their swimming. So it's it's a very different environment when it comes to developing these kids. And then so we're trying to change that a little bit, trying to kind of extend that the time frame of their swimming careers.
So Robert posted a question here. So you're trying to develop this and you're trying to direct this, but how does that work? I mean, you're a guy, and obviously if it's a women only facility, like, are you not allowed to be there?
Yeah,
and you're
exactly.
coaching coaches, or what?
Yeah, exactly. I'm not allowed to be there. So what would happen is before I would do the interviews with them and so forth, and hire these ladies. But then before our training sessions, I would sit with them. We would have a debriefing, and they'll be covered, of course. We'll have a briefing, and then afterwards we'll have a debriefing about what was going on in the session. And I would very much rely on just very good communication with them. So it's fine for us to interact outside of the pool when they're completely covered, and then they'll go into the facility. I won't be there, and I'll also heavily rely on my team leaders, who are other female coaches that I've brought in from outside to kind of be my eyes and ears in the facility. And so the idea is that we can train these Saudi ladies, and then as we build more facilities, we can kind of move them out to become the leaders in that sense. But it's everything from water safety to facility management, learn to swim, coaching. So there's a whole lot of work to be done. It's really a mountain of firsts. But yeah, it's exciting.
So we got a couple questions up here. So is swimming considered a viable activity for the girls, or are other things considered to be more desirable? I mean, are you competing with other sports or other activities?
They do like football quite a bit. One thing that counts in our favor is, as an Islamic country who's very, very devoted to their faith. The Prophet Muhammad said, every Muslim has to be able to swim, ride a horse, and shoot, whether that's, gun or bow and arrow or whatever. But so swimming is actually, one of the religious, not requirements, but, it's a good thing to have. So a lot of them would come to you and say, based on our religion, this is something that is preferred, and, everybody wants to join for that reason. But then, of course, we also do it from a water safety side, kind of take that approach. They do love the water. They do love swimming. I mean, we are in the desert. It gets up to, 54 degrees Celsius easily. So, yeah, definitely enjoying being in the water. So there's quite a bit of motivation for them to swim.
So, Robert, you got any questions? You got anything you want to throw in here?
I have a ton of questions, actually. Like, Reinhardt, how, water safety and all that you're talking about, what's the closest body of water that they can actually go out and kind of enjoy on their own, number one. Number two, are there public swimming pools that these female swimmers can enjoy, or is that only for men? And
yeah, that's a good question. So Riyadh is pretty much in the middle of the country or the kingdom, and then you've got Jeddah and Dammam on both sides. And the coastline, of course, is a little bit more active in terms of people participating in the sport. But the beaches are not open for ladies to. There's some private beaches and so forth, but most of the swimming would take place in private villas or backyards, backyard pools. So that's where the majority of it happens. You do have some of the female universities have got swimming pools. The problem is just, the pools that we've got in Saudi, we've got unbelievable facilities like you wouldn't believe. But there's not really anything that is geared towards intro into swimming, shallow swimming pools. So one of my tasks is just building shallow swimming pools where you can actually stand and learn to swim and get comfortable with the water. We've have some unbelievable facilities, 50-meter pools. I think we've got about 6 in the city, 3 of which are empty, no water in. But unbelievable world-class facilities that's not being utilized simply because you don't have people able to swim to use them.
So yeah, so I was going to ask why. So you said there's 3 that don't have water in it. I mean, what whether they don't have enough people to support it, or they don't have the funding's not there, or like why?
No. I mean, the funding is absolutely there. They built a new pool in 2016. I think it was about 300 million to build this pool. And the problem is just, again, they're 2-meter deep pools that's completely unsafe, and everybody wants to swim, but the ability is not there. So there's definitely not a matter of funding. Funding is the only problem we don't have.
Revive these pools eventually, you think?
I hope so. I mean, that's kind of part of my aim, to get some of these pools. A lot of them are on government property, so it's a little bit difficult. But I've got a pool 3 minutes from my house that was built in the 70s. I think the Prince went to the Munich Olympics and he bought the blueprint, and he built 3 of them. And so it's a 50-meter pool with a 25-meter pool and a diving pool. And I mean, this was, like I said, this was built in the 70s, and it's got an elevator up to the diving board, and it's got pacing lights on the 50-meter pool. It's unbelievable for such an old pool. It's immaculate, but it's barely been touched. So for me, it's more about just the activation of the sport and getting people into it. So yeah.
And then practices. What kind of practices do you run, and how do you start the same way to build? I don't know if you have teams there per se, or you compete against other teams, and how do you build them to a point where they can compete? And what kind of practices do you? I mean, all of that it's happening here in the U.S.
Yeah. So we do have a lot of coaches that came over from Egypt. So there's a very big Egyptian influence in the coaching style. But the teams that we have here are boys teams. So we've got something that's similar to what you would call like the YMCA or so. So they're government clubs, boy clubs. And so there is, these clubs, but they would not, it's not a year-round thing. They would start training maybe 2 or 3 months before the big competitions and so forth. So, part of the goal is to kind of create a year-round swimming culture instead of something I would just do during the summer, to try and get them to train all year long. So, we do have a few teams, but, they're kind of small, but they're definitely, the motivation is there, the intent is there. So I think one of the other things we're trying to do, and that was actually my first role when I worked at the Olympic Committee and the Swimming Federation, was to establish the first, privately owned club team. But the challenges we faced was, there were just so many because there was such a new concept. These clubs are all free clubs, so you're bringing in a pay to play concept, which is completely foreign. Like, why would we pay to be part of a club if we can go to one of the government clubs? And then that makes it very difficult to kind of grow the club system as we would know it. And the other thing is, the kids get quite a bit of prize money, and they all have signed contracts with these clubs, so it's very difficult for them to basically move from a government club to a private club. So, that makes the whole development of the sport quite tricky. But, the country has changed so much over the last 5 years since I've been here, and they're moving more towards decentralizing and privatizing sports. So I'm hoping, in the near future, we will have quite a few, private teams. Hopefully, we'll see how that goes. But we had to go all the way back to the commercial registration of what is a nonprofit, like just establishing a nonprofit and establishing, the concept of a privately owned club as a business, just as a business entity. Just that's how far back we kind of had to go just to, try and do this. But
so how far along are you in this? How long have you been working on the like that club side of it? It's just been the last 2 years, last 3 years. You said you've been there about 5.
Yeah, I've been doing that for the last 5 years. It's just been in a different capacity. So before it was, with the Swimming Federation and with the Olympic Committee, actually working for them. And now it's more, in the private sector. But, same goal, same mission.
So how does that, we're asking you a lot of questions, but this is really entertaining to me. I'm sure Robert, I'm sure you feel the same way. This is so outside of the box. So how, does Saudi have female Olympic swimmers?
No, they don't. That's one of the things that I think, we do get a lot of backlash for not taking ladies to the international meets. I'm not sure how far away we are from that happening. We had 1 or 2 ladies campaigning, and I was kind of trying to help them to get to a point where we can take them to international meets, but we're not there. I don't want to say we're not there yet because it's a very sensitive and interesting approach, because it's not a matter of them. You can't call it progress, really. It's a little bit offensive to say that, you're not sending ladies to the international scene, like you need to get with the times. Like that's not the case. It's just, it's their choice. A lot of the girls that do swim, they have no interest in a guy seeing them in a swimsuit or going onto the international scene. It's just not what they want. And, we have to respect that. It's, we can't force them to, do the things we do and do things the same way. So it's something that has to come naturally from the culture within. It's something that they have to decide or find an interest in going that direction. But currently, no, there's not, and I don't think there's ever been any ladies that represented the kingdom. But hopefully, in the future that'll be different. We'll see. The current Crown Prince has made a lot of changes. Ladies started driving about a year or 2 ago. We got cinemas about a year or 2 ago. They're putting a lot of money into sports and entertainment. They're building unbelievable cities. One sports city just outside Riyadh that's just phenomenal. Sports and entertainment. I think something like 22 Olympic-sized stadiums and 6 Flags, and just insane amounts of money that's being spent. We're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars, towards sports and entertainment. So there's definitely a bright future. It will be interesting to see what happens within the next decade or 2.
Do you have competitions? Like, can these girls compete in national type championship or internet? No.
No. There's, I'm sure within the school girls, like if there's, 2 girls schools competing against each other, there is between, there's kind of a Western league between some of the Western schools, the American school, British school, French school, so forth, and they would have, kind of a Western swim meets and stuff. But that's pretty much, in the compounds of the Western schools. But for the local girls, no, that's something that doesn't
What's
exist.
their motivation to train? Because for us, if you don't have competition, a lot of the kids will drop out after a while. It's boring. It's like, why am I training, kind of thing. And so how do you keep them motivated?
Well, this is the thing, this is so fresh that we haven't even got to the point yet. They're just, they see in the facility, I have screens up of girls swimming and so forth, and at the Olympic level and so forth. And they're at the point just where they want to be able to have that life skill. Parents want it to be safe in the water, and it's something that to them is so new and cool to have this new skill. But definitely, within the next year or 2, we can have some of our female facilities compete against each other in a female environment. So that's kind of the goal, is to build as many of these facilities as we can.
So how many do you have? I mean, how many Like, what's the plan there? How many do you have? What's the goal?
Yeah,
Like,
so we have our first one that's finished, and then we've got another two that we're busy negotiating with just in Riyadh. So that's kind of my project for until the end of this year, is to have at least 3 up and running. But a lot of it is kind of trial and error. I don't want to go too fast, and then it's something that's not, that doesn't follow the projection I have in my head of how this is going to go. So I kind of have to take it as a trial and see where it goes and see how fast it will grow. So yeah.
Fascinating.
it is. So best put a question up here. Have you got any girls who you spotted that have amazing potential, and it sounds like that's kind of the goal here, is to give these girls that do have this potential that opportunity. So, I mean,
Yeah,
how,
absolutely.
so you've been working on it for 5 years. I mean, do you have a group of 15, 16, 17-year-olds that are swimming on a regular basis, or is it still like mainly 12 and unders, or what are you?
Yeah, we just had our first girl actually go to Division 1 school. So that was quite a big one for us. But other than that, we do have quite a few kids who nobody knows about Division 1 swimming. Nobody knows about college swimming. They don't know, the Olympics is not something anybody knows about. They know Michael Phelps. I'm not sure what exactly he swam. So we have a lot of little kids who, I think the younger generation of parents, they're more open to, girls continuing swimming after puberty. And we do have a couple of girls who've been swimming, who went over to the States and swimming club in the States. But we're talking about, less than 5. Like I said, we've only had one girl go to Division 1 college swimming. So, but at least it's a start. I think it's something that hopefully will snowball when they see these girls, especially with social media. I think it's kind of the only way for them to have these role models to look up to. It's not something you're going to see on Saudi TV or you're not going to see the Saudi girls at the Olympics quite yet. But again, we have to start somewhere.
So, Robert, we had a question there. Just on another note, changing gears just a little bit. What do you guys got going on with your high school season and everything else going on down there in the Gator Swim Club world?
Oh, well, I
hear you're a high school coach now.
Yes. Yeah. Well, my son on the high school team, and I wanted to. We had the coach quit, 2 weeks before the late season started, so it was very far into it, and actually went in to try to help him find a adequate high school coach, and I ended up with the job myself. So I don't exactly know how that happened during the conversation. But we're able to put a meet schedule together. It's not the regular schedule, but I think I have about 4 meets plus the district, regional, and hopefully a state series meet coming up. It's it's challenging. I know, Brian, the Dwight Hunter Municipal Pool, which is the Northeast Pool as we call it. It has the capacity to run meets, but they're limiting us to 50 swimmers or less. So it's quite the challenge. So what we've done is we have 3 heats of kids, and we ran two double duels. So one last weekend and one this weekend among the high schools in town here. And we each had 3 lanes. So we ran heats of 9 swimmers, and we had 1 heat of everything, including relays. And then for the 50 freestyle, 100 freestyle, and I think it was maybe 100 backstroke, we had more than 1 heat because we had some kids that, we had some extra people swimming those events. but we tried to keep 27 swimmers or less on the pool deck at any given time. There were no cool downs really. What they allowed us to do, or what we figured out we could do, is after each event, they finish the event, we give them a 25 easy, they get to the other end, they walk, they get out and walk. While they're getting out and walking, we stand up the next 9 up on the block and we get them going. So this way there's no direct interaction between them, and we can keep the social distancing aspect of things. And then these kids come back to the starting end, they collect their stuff and they walk outside, and we had some tents set up for them and lawn chairs, etc., around the perimeter of the outdoor pool. Obviously this is all outdoors, and that's how we run our meets. We had just the coaches, we had one timer per lane, and we had a couple officials, a starter and one other, and that's it. So I actually don't know, and I'm curious, you probably know how they've been running meets, in colder places and up north, or how maybe they're going to run meets because they haven't run any. I don't know. But this is how we've done it, and it was actually successful, and I'm hoping we can keep this up and, get us through districts, which is going to be a little more challenging because there's more teams. Then obviously regionals, and we do have regionals or district sites right now. I don't know if I actually know what my region's gonna be held at. Club, because I coach both now, obviously, in a club scene. I was just up at St. Petersburg, the spa meet a week ago, and that was very interesting. We're limited to 2 swimmers per lane right now in both the university facility and the city facilities. And that's pretty much how we are able to train in Gainesville. I know that outside of Gainesville, a lot of teams are able to train, 3, 4, 5, even 6 kids in a lane. And that's strange to our kids because, for example, we went to the spa meet and all of a sudden they give us 2 lanes for 12 swimmers or 16 swimmers. I don't know how many we had, quite a bit. And we're like, okay, we can put, I was confused because I'm like, did they expect us to put all swimmers in the lane and warm them up at the same time? Or were those my 2 lanes and I was able to do whatever I wanted in those 2 lanes and just get them ready in the next hour. So that's what we chose. We had 3 warm-ups of 20 minutes each, and we rotated kids in and out. However, our neighbors to the left and right, they were just 6, 7, 8 kids in the lane, no problem. So I suggested to our kids that, hey, do you want to do the same? And they looked at me like I was an alien. They're not used to it. So perception makes a big difference. So I think, it's a challenge for us because we don't train like that. They thought it was maybe unsafe for us to do that, even though kids around them were doing just the same.
We're indoors. We've got a couple pretty nice indoor facilities, and we're running meets and we're running them inside. The first one we were limited to 80 kids per session. The second one we were limited to 120. That's an LSC rule. I think it's based on a USA Swimming recommendation. I don't know, but and actually our LSC has allowed us, depending on the size of your facility and your capacity, they're allowing you to apply to have more than that. So we're going to do that. I'm not sure what that number is going to be, but we did a similar staging thing. We didn't swim down to the other end. We just had them get out and walk the other direction, and then we brought the next heat around the other side. So we basically had a circular pattern. What was that, Robert?
You didn't have any cool down whatsoever, right?
No, we had warm up, warm down. They were limited to 4-2 lane, and they had to stay socially distanced, which they did a pretty good job of. We had to get on them a little bit, but we're swimming 4-2 a lane, so they know that one person at the flags, one person at the wall, one person at the flags, one person at the wall. So like you're talking about, what your norm is now, that's our norm. So we know how to do that as a group and as a team. and our meets have been inter squad. We haven't had any other teams come to those meets since this whole COVID thing started.
Brian, how do you warm up, cool down with, because it's pretty much you finish your event, you go cool down. Or is there a limit on how many people you put in there, or you just, as long as they socially distance themselves, they're fine?
We limited the first meet, we limited them 4 to a lane. So they had to go find a lane that didn't have more than 3 people in it, or 4 people in it. They had to go find something, the last meet, we limited it to 6 or 5, maybe, I don't know, something like that. It actually didn't really become an issue. We were able to keep them down to about 3 or 4 to a lane usually, because you had 3 heats being staged and you've only got 120 kids in the meet and you just had 8 kids swim. So like you've got a lot of your population already somewhere else, in a designated area. So it's a different animal for sure. And the last one went pretty good. So I'll be interested to see what happens. We're going to go over to the other facility for one of our upcoming meets, and the other facility is the one in Louisville, and I think they've got seating capacity for like 3,000 or something. So we can put 250 kids up in the bleachers 6 feet apart, no problem. And they've got a lot of deck space too. At the facility that I actually work at, we don't have a ton of deck space. I'd say we might be able to get 150 kids in there socially distanced. 120 was a bit of a challenge. So we may be able to increase that number a little bit, but I don't think we can get it much bigger than where we're at now in my particular facility. It's much like your Gator Swim Club facility. I mean, you can put them in the bleachers up there, but you don't have deck space.
You're not much for deck space for sure. Yeah.
So
we're not going to be able to have our traditional December meet either. So we got a liner issue with our pool. So pool's going to be shut down for 4 to 6 weeks, maybe more, and it's just going to hurt us bad. We're already, not as new. Our numbers are down from where we were in February, and I'm fear that this is just going to push us a little more into, even less swimmers, because once they break the routine of being there year round, especially the younger kids, it's hard to bring them back.
I was just going to ask you guys. I mean, I'm so out of the loop with the club swimming and so forth, and it's so interesting for me to hear how you guys are running these meets. And my question was exactly that. Like, what does the numbers look like for these clubs? I mean, what kind of dropout rate have you had, or how is
because of the pandemic?
Yeah.
Well, see, the problem is I'm literally right now. I put 2 in a lane, and I have exact numbers for each of the groups. So
I mean, club-wise, your club is still the same size.
And I'm leading into that. So because of I have fixed numbers in each group, my club as a whole is limited to those numbers. So I'm about 40% down.
Wow.
See, we've lost about, I don't know, 10 to 15% maybe. We've actually held on to our numbers pretty well. I've been pleasantly surprised every time we get our deactivation list that it's not bigger than it is, because most of our older kids have hung on and have, now that we've gotten back into a little bit more of a routine. But we face the same challenge Robert has. I mean, when you're limited to 4 kids in a lane and you've been swimming 6 and 8 kids in a lane for your little kids, and now you can only swim 4 or 2 in his case, you just, there's not enough time in the day.
And Brian, I hear you going with 4 a lane, and I'm thinking, wow, what a luxury. If I had that, I could rebuild, I could bring a whole bunch of them back, but there's just no telling when that's going to happen here in Gainesville. And, it's all dependent on the area. 2 a lane is just, it's very limiting. And
so
every
decide who gets to come back.
well, it's kind of, they decided in a little bit, right? First come, first serve. So what we said, and it was kind of weird and people were like, oh yeah, we'd like to start back up now today. And I'm like, we don't have any more space. and then I don't know what they do, they kind of, so I think we could build back up, but we need to go to 3 or 4 in a lane. If we do that, it's going to change. I mean, think about it. It doubles my numbers if I can go 4 in a lane. It literally doubles my numbers.
So Robert, it's got to drive you crazy that your governor just
Absolutely.
completely freed up your entire state to do whatever they want. They can go to Disney World, they can go to the beach, they can go anywhere they want to go. But that when they come to the pool, they're only allowed to swim 2 to a lane. And that so the university has the same policy as well. Man,
Yep. That's
gotta make your head want to explode.
There's no, and no one has sympathy for you, because the reality is that, the other coaches say, oh, so sorry to hear that. But, everybody out for themselves. And, restaurants now at 100% capacity, they don't even require masks as of a couple of days ago. And I'm still 2 in a lane, what's up?
So changing gears, but not changing gears. I'm kind of interested, Reinhardt, how has this pandemic, like how are you guys in Saudi treating this, and how has it affected y'all's daily lives and things like that? I mean, I'm just interested in the cultural difference there, and how you guys, your government and your country or kingdom or whatever has handled it versus how we've done it. Because we have no idea how we're doing it here. Depending on where you're standing, it changes every day.
I think, Saudi, for me, did an unbelievable job at handling this. I mean, it was early lockdown. It was one of the first countries to go into lockdown, I think. And, the numbers are way down. We're pretty much back to normal. There's social distancing and there's masks in public, but, nobody really cares about, nobody is kind of arguing against the point of wearing a mask. Everybody is like, whatever, we'll wear the mask, not a big deal, and just going on with life. I think the biggest thing is the kids are still doing a distance learning, so there's still online classes. I think there's some of the senior classes that's going in maybe twice a week or so. But for the most part, I mean, I've been extremely fortunate to be in Saudi, in my opinion, during this time. Being on a Western compound, it's kind of like a mini resort. We have a restaurant here. We've got all our sporting facilities and stuff. So, from a lockdown point of view, I mean, for me, it's been really good. And
what do you attribute good attitude towards masks and lockdown and just acceptance of everything? What do you attribute that attitude to, knowing more than one culture and knowing U.S. culture?
Yeah, I think it's just part of it is it's not a very confrontational culture to begin with. I think a lot of it is also they really do trust the leadership and I mean, people don't really question and trying to, I mean, I think it's just like a less confrontational mindset.
And
also,
pretty much everybody's well off. I mean, mostly well off. I mean, they can live, right? There's no poverty is not huge, right?
Well, I mean, poverty is not big, but I mean, the king immediately, as soon as all this happened, said, "Look, anybody who's in the country will get free corona, healthcare, whether you're an expat, it doesn't matter who you are, you'll get free treatment." They were handing out, masks and sanitizers for free everywhere. The shops were stocked. I mean, I was looking at, the shops in the States there at some point, the shelves were empty and toilet paper and all these crazes. And I went to the shops here and it was just unbelievable. I mean, the shops were stocked. Like, they were so well prepared for this whole thing that I was really pleasantly surprised at how they handled it. Of course, the testing is also for free. So, from that point of view, that
sounds like they have nothing to worry about then. Of course they go with. Yeah.
I mean, the only annoying thing was, not being able to go on vacation and fly out. But that's, we'll get there when we get there, I guess.
Very interesting.
Yeah, that's. I mean, it's good stuff. So, you were talking about religion being such a big part of the culture, and how does that, like I'm thinking about practice. Like I know there's requirements in
Yeah.
and they're not requirements, but there's traditions within their days where they have
Yeah.
times when they do certain prayers and things like this.
Yeah.
Like does practice just stop and everybody gets out and does this, or like
Yeah.
how does this affect day in and day out operations, stuff that we wouldn't even think about? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like
So the Saudis in general, they're very, if you could say, good Muslims. They're very, they're very determined with their religion, and we 5 days or 5 times a day we've got prayer time here. The shops will close, and basically, people stop working and they do their prayer, and so especially in the government facilities when I was running the Olympic complex, you would somewhere around 3 o'clock, somewhere around 6, and somewhere around 8. You would stop all programming. The guys would hop out. They have to put on some shorts and so forth, and then they would do their prayer as like a group. So one of the assistant coaches would lead the prayer, which is difficult because you might be in the middle of a main set, all your kids are warmed up, and now all of a sudden everybody has to hop out. But it's manageable. It's perfectly fine. You can you just have to be creative. I mean, it's no different than the workarounds that you guys have done with Corona to make things work. It's kind of the same thing I'm doing here. It's just adapting to the cultures and the ways of doing things. I think one of the biggest challenges for me was when I first came here during Ramadan, Saudi and Ramadan. They of course they're fasting for the whole month while the sun is up. So you can imagine, Ramadan usually is in those crucial months of preparation for some of the big international meets, whether it's Asian Games or GCC Games or Islamic Games, whatever it is. So now you can imagine your athletes coming to the pool. They haven't eaten all day. They're completely tired. Everybody's kind of hangry. Everybody's annoyed, agitated. So for me, I went through that with them the first year just so I can kind of understand what it's like, what they feel like, and kind of, get on the level to better understand what it is, they're going through. So what we ended up doing was just thinking completely out of the box. They would come in at probably around 5, and we would do like an hour and a half of just easy swimming technique work. They would get out, they would go break their fast, go home, have their big meal, and they'll come back around 11 o'clock at night, and we'll do our harder training session from about 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. in the morning for the whole month.
What's a hard training session? Can I quickly ask?
Yeah, please.
What's a hard training session for you guys? What's it look like?
So, I mean, they would get up to, you're talking about kids that, if we can break 2 minutes on a 100 free, that would be, for the age groupers, that would be quite good. Our top breaststroker here, Muhammad, he is 221 in the 200 breast. So he's the top guy. But yeah, so to our practice, we would try and touch on everything a little bit. A lot of time when I'm coaching, I'm working with the kids, but also with the coaches. And we'll they'll see stuff online. They'll see US RPT, and they'll see threshold 100s and whatever. So I try and throw a little bit of everything in there to kind of not just not just work with the kids, but also with the assistant coaches. But my training in general is I'll give them a 15-minute social warm up by themselves, and I like doing power days, speed days, taking it day by day and doing something different. We've got one of my big things is actually NLP and mental training for the kids that they do online, just to kind of help them deal with a lot of the stuff that's going on, whether it's coronavirus or whatever it is that they have to deal with. That I find that to help me quite a bit. That's something they do completely independently. And then we also have some strength trainers that are they're Westerners that do quite a good job with not just lifting for the sake of lifting, but actually developing the kids individually on, based on their needs. But yeah, I mean, we do. I was fortunate enough to have quite a few different coaches growing up, Russian, Hungarian, Australian, South African, American. So, there's a little bit of all of those elements in the training that we do. My Russian coach did a lot of heart rate stuff. So we would have, we have little heart rate monitors they put in their caps, and I have it up on a screen in the indoor facility, and we can all see the whole team's heart rates, kind of hold each other accountable. So we do a lot of heart rate stuff. My American coach that I had when I was age group swimmer, we were hammering those 10 and 20 100s on, short intervals, and my Australian coach doing a lot of get up swims. And so I try and incorporate pretty much everything that, and then of course, all the power stuff that we did at university level that, we didn't touch on power stuff as age group swimmers. We didn't almost do any power development that I can remember. So we'll throw some shoots in there.
I think when you were at Kentucky, Reinhardt, I think you guys were some of the first guys that were doing any of that power stuff anywhere. I mean, I know talking to oh my gosh, I'm blanking on his name. The guy that was there before Zatani that's in Gainesville now. Robert, what's his name? The sprint coach that was at UF that's now oh my God, I can't believe I can't remember his name.
I don't know.
He was at Kentucky. He was before Zatani.
Yeah, because
but anyways, he was one of the first guys to do that stuff. So I think you were
heavy on the power racks and all the morning trainings. I remember, even after Zatani, we had Coach Derek. We would do power stuff all the time, which I really liked. I think the kids like seeing something that's measurable and that they can improve on, and they see the small incremental improvements. So I really like that. I like giving them shoots. One guy with a big shoot, one with a small shoot, and just having them race with a little bit of a head start or paddles and fins, and just making it fun.
Guys, we're running out of time here. We got about a minute left. I just want to thank you, both of you guys, for coming on. This was great. We changed gears a little bit from what we've been doing, but I think it was productive, and I think hopefully people got something out of it. I know I did. I had a great time, and thank you, Reinhardt, for everything. I mean, that was a ton of information right there, and it was fun to listen to. And Robert, thank you, man. And you guys both keep up fighting the good fight and doing a good job. Because
thank you so much, and thanks for the invite. Really appreciate it. So let's stay in touch, and I'll be watching the show.
Yeah, and next, I don't know when we're gonna next week we'll probably be back with the normal format, and we'll go back to doing the workout share and stuff like that. This week being the lone host, I wanted to change it up just a little bit. So thank you guys for coming on, and on that note, we'll go ahead and sign out.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Join us on the Swim Monkey.
Swim Monkey TV on the Monkey.